Hello, I am Nadine Carty-Keynes, and thank you for joining us at the Nevis Emergency Operations Center, EOC, today, Thursday, 20th May, 2020, for an update on the situation regarding the novel coronavirus, COVID-19 on Nevis. I want to take this opportunity to welcome all our viewers and media houses that have joined us. All questions will be taken at the end after each speaker would have presented. The Nevis COVID-19 briefings are aired on Nevis television at 8 p.m. on Mondays and Thursdays. Today we have with us Mr. Brian Dyer, the Director of Nevis Emergency Operations Center, Mr. Lyndon David, Superintendent of Police, Nevis Division, Dr. Judy Nisbet, Chair of the Nevis COVID-19 Task Force, Nurse Ermin Jeffers, Coordinator, Community Health Nursing Services, and finally, Ms. Zanella Claxton, Principal Education Officer, Department of Education. I'd now like to welcome Mr. Brian Dyer, who will provide his updates.
Good evening, all. The Caribbean Institute of Meteorology and Hydrology has released its 2020 Atlantic Hurricane Season Experimental Forecast, and in their predictions, they are predicting for the entire season, they're expecting 8 to 21 named storms, of which they're expecting 17 named storms. For the first half of June, July, and August, they're expecting 6 named storms. And for peak season, they're anticipating 13 named storms. And for the second half of the season, September, October, November, they are anticipating or predicting 9 storms. With regards to June, July, August, we are still experiencing drought conditions. So the Caribbean Institute of Meteorology and Hydrology has indicated that the general population would experience some heat discomfort in the early part of the hurricane season. That would increase towards August. So heat stress would affect not only us humans, but some animals would be affected as well. With regards to drought relief, the CMIH is predicting short-term drought will continue through June, and this would affect soil moisture, small streams and small reservoirs. And the slower long-term drought relief, this will be affecting groundwater, very large rivers, and water reservoirs. Continuing, the Nevis Public Works has advised that they'll be conducting some road works this evening from Marlon's Rental in Camps to the Methodist Church in Camps. So persons wishing to, especially the essential workers wishing to access Barnaby, will have to do so via Gingerland. And persons in the immediate area, please to ensure that you are guided accordingly. As we go into the hurricane season, the potential for flooding and flash floods will increase from June to late August across most of the Caribbean islands. So this is something we are mindful of. And with the influx of rain, we could have flash flooding that would have an impact on our soil. We have erosion, etc. So I want to appeal to persons to desist from dumping in our guts. So when the rain comes, we should have free-flowing water that would minimize the impact on our properties. All right, continuing, we have some statistics from our Compliance Task Force. We have had 427 assessments thus far. From this assessment, we see we have had 13 churches assessed. We have bakeries and delis, 7, banks and financial institutions, 13, buses, ferries and taxis, 19, game room, 2, gas stations, 8, government buildings and departments, 72, laundromats, 2, market vendors, 4, mechanic shops, 17, offices, 59, pharmacies 2, restaurants 14, salon and barber shops 20, shops 26, snackers and bars 54, stores 60, street vendors 10, supermarkets 7, funeral home 2, gyms 2, car wash 3, wholesale 2, radio station and communications 2, and manufacturing 7. Along with the churches, this brings the total to 427. And finally, I'd like to end with giving special appreciation and thanks to Ms. Tracy Chapman for donating snacks to the EOC today. That include cookies and cakes, so I would be taking part in that shortly. Thank you very much. And finally, we'd like to say a special thank you to the Masters Cricket team and club for donating 4 cases of hand sanitizers to the EOC and the Nevis Task Force. The donation was timely, and we do thank the Masters Cricket team and do wish them well in their endeavors as they try to regain the cricket supremacy in the OACS and leewards. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dyer, for your presentation. I'd now like to welcome Mr. Lyndon David, Superintendent of Police, Nevis Division, to give his updates.
Thank you, Nadine. Good evening, all. Once again, it's a pleasure to be here to give you some information as to the operations of the police here in Nevis. Thus far, we have conducted 768 patrols, 70 vehicle checkpoints, 22 arrests were made, and out of those 22 arrests, we have 10 persons who were charged. 13 crimes were committed during the period of our curfew and state of emergency, and 13 arrests were made. We had 1,868 vehicles were stopped, and we are realizing that most of the people that we are encountering are persons who are essential workers, persons who are given permissions to be on the road from time to time for varying reasons. So we are saying we're good that the majority of persons are there. Yes, we know 1 or 2 persons who were not given permission would be on the road, and thus I will say we have 11 persons were informed that they will be summoned for the offenses of breaching the various restrictions that are there. We are still saying to persons to continue to wear a mask in public places. However, I just want to remind you of the curfew hours. We are under new regulations, so we're just going to let you know. Monday through Friday, curfew hours start from 8:01 p.m. until 4:59 a.m. the following day. On Saturdays and Sundays, curfew period is 7:01 p.m. until 4:59 a.m. the next day. We are encouraging businesses to continue to give your support to the elderly, persons with special needs, and also essential workers once they provide ID cards for patronizing your business. I also encourage all those pastors who will be having church service Saturday coming and Sunday to continue to observe the social distancing and physical distancing protocols. Whilst you were away in terms of your virtual services, now you may be meeting physically. So we are saying to you to ensure that you meet these whilst you're doing it physically. Just a reminder, we know that there are some persons who are having parties from time to time at their places. We're saying that's a no-no. These will not be permitted, and once we get the information, we will definitely come to your residence, places where you have these activities, and disrupt them. Persons will be arrested and be summoned for the offenses. We know that there are no sporting events, but just in case persons want to warm up or whatever event, there is no big event coming up, so you shouldn't be warming up. Regular exercise on the beach in the morning and in the afternoon are good enough for you. Therefore, we are also saying to you that once persons are in the public places, ensure that you use your mask. Do not consume alcohol and go and speak in people's faces. That's a no-no. We know you continue to consume alcohol. That we will not stop. But we are saying to you, just drink responsibly. Finally, just thanking God for his continued mercies on our federation to ensure that we have no new cases and to continue to give us the energy and the insight to continue to do the work that we are doing. The governments, local and federal alike, for their input in everything that we are doing. The staff of the Royal St. Christopher Nevis Police Force here in Nevis, the medical staff, the disaster staff, other essential workers for the work you're doing to ensure that we have things going well, and the good citizens of Nevis who continue to give support. We are saying to you, continue. Persons who are violating, we are saying to you, remember, we are dealing with safety regarding a virus. Some people call it the invisible enemy, but we are saying to you, protect yourself and your loved ones. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. David, for your presentation. And now I'd like to welcome Dr. Judy Nisbet, Chair of the Nevis COVID-19 Task Force, to provide her update.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening to everyone. The situation report remains the same as Monday's briefing. We have not had any new suspected cases needing testing. There were no contacts of positive cases that needed testing, and therefore the numbers remain the same, with 124 persons tested so far on Nevis, 120 persons testing negative, 4 persons testing positive, and no pending results. There are currently no active cases, and no one is in quarantine. As I discussed in the last briefing, the statutory rules and orders number 19 of 2020, released on Saturday, May 23rd, states that churches have been given the option of reopening on Saturdays and Sundays between the hours of 7 a.m. and 5 p.m. if they are comfortable doing so. Reopening is not compulsory, it's an option. I will continue today to highlight a few protocols that should be followed by churches. Services should be for a maximum of 90 minutes. Services, of course, can be shorter than this suggested time limit. Churches can have multiple services throughout the 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. allotted time, but allowing for 2 hours between services to sanitize the church. Also, there may be need to sanitize frequently touched surfaces during the service, such as doorknobs, microphones, etc. It is encouraged, however, that doors remain opened so that door handles will not need to be touched. And also it's ideal that each person taking part in conducting the service allow their own microphone for the duration of the service and their own podium if necessary. These are then sanitized at the end of the service. Of course, persons cleaning and sanitizing the church must be supplied with the requisite products, including gloves. Persons are required to practice physical distancing of 6 feet while going to place their tithes and offerings into the receptacle provided. Now, churches should not be passing around a collection plate anymore, because it means then that everyone will be touching the same common plate. Physical distancing of 6 feet is expected also when proceeding for communion, and the sharing of the common cup is not allowed. Churches are to discourage persons from congregating outside after church and to leave for home immediately. If buses are being used, the rule of 2 persons per row applies. For churches that are air-conditioned, you are asked to avoid the use of the AC and open windows to allow the free flow of air. Congregational singing is not allowed. Singing in church should be limited to solos and small groups of 8 or less persons, depending, of course, on the size of your church, observing physical distancing. And it is recommended that if it's a group, that this group be more than 6 feet away from the congregation. Use of pre-recorded music should be encouraged. I know the singing, the congregational singing, has concerned a number of persons, but I've seen some suggestions that congregations might want to take up. For example, to replace singing with the reciting of hymns rather than the singing of the hymns as an option. Since singing, as we know, will generate lots of droplets, and just speaking, just reciting the hymns, will generate less droplets. Or churches have the option of using pre-recorded musical performances, including dance, that persons can look at on the screen during the service, at a particular time during the service. I know that persons are anxious to make a joyful noise, but I ask equally that you love your neighbor and thus protect your fellow congregants. Persons may be asymptomatic and bellowing out their favorite hymns and spreading COVID-19 to unsuspecting members of the congregation is not ideal at all. Congregations or churches should ensure the full cooperation of the members, and church leaders should assign a member or members in each service to ensure that protocols are adhered to, and also to share the protocols and expectations with the members of the congregation. Please let us comply with all the protocols that we have discussed in the previous briefing and in this briefing. And churches, please feel free to call the compliance task force to assess your church prior to reopening. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Judy Nisbet, for your update. I'd now like to welcome Nurse Ermin Jeffers, Coordinator, Community Health Nursing Services, to provide her update.
Thank you very much, Nadine, for your invitation. Good evening to everyone here today and to those listening and viewing via NTV and the various media houses. As Coordinator of Community Nursing Services, I have responsibility for all 6 health centers and the mental health unit. I am pleased to report that the health centers and the mental health unit remained open throughout the entire period of lockdown and curfew days. We have now implemented new protocols at the mental health unit and at all health centers, which are designed to protect both staff, clients/patients. All clients or patients accessing care at the mental health units and health centers are kindly asked to wear a mask. Alcohol-based hand sanitizers are installed at the entrance and exit of all health centers and at the mental health unit. Dispensers are regularly filled. Persons are asked to utilize same. Posters promoting hand washing are displayed. We ensure our units are clean and hygienic by disinfecting floors, tables, equipment, etc. regularly. Social distancing guidelines are to be adhered to, and as a result, we are now given appointments by date and time to our antenatal, postnatal, and family planning clients. Seating in the waiting area is reduced. Prior to COVID-19, parents of children attending child health clinics were given appointments by date. Now, this is no longer the case. Appointments are now staggered and given by date and time. This is to avoid crowd in the waiting room. However, priority is given to children scheduled to be immunized and infants 6 months and under. We encourage continued use of our robust immunization services. Some health centers have resumed diabetic and hypertensive clinics with no more than 5 clients at the health center at any one time. Diabetic and hypertensive clients are kindly asked to take note that the nurse at the health center in their area will notify them if and when they are to attend these sessions. In spite of schools being closed, we are currently in the process of conducting our regular school health sessions for the students of grade 6 who will be transitioning to secondary school. Parents and guardians have been called via telephone and given appointments for their child's physical examination, immunization, and laboratory investigations. I must pause here to say thanks to the parents and guardians for their kind cooperation. During community visits, members of staff continue to observe the guidelines for healthcare workers' protection in the context of COVID-19. Persons seeking further information with regards to the clinic sessions are asked to call the health center in their area and the mental health unit. Please see numbers on the screen. I would now like to take the opportunity to thank the mental and community health staff for their continued support during this pandemic. To my community health nurses who were assigned to the persons in quarantine, the entire mental health and community health staff, I say, your hard work and dedication are greatly appreciated. Let us continue to work together as a team. Dr. Nisbet, you and your dream team are doing an excellent job. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nurse Ermin Jaffas, for your presentation from Community Health Nursing Services. Our final presenter is Ms. Zanella Claxton, Principal Education Officer, Department of Education.
Good evening, everyone. I am here once again to bring updates on behalf of the Department of Ministry of Education. And this evening, I would like to start off by bringing some great news for parents who have been waiting patiently. We are pleased to share with you that we started the device distribution process earlier today, and our distribution is being done by school on scheduled distribution days. Parents and guardians will be contacted by the Department of Education to schedule a collection appointment. Parents and guardians will collect devices at the specified appointment time and date. We are kindly asking that the parent or guardian bring a government-issued ID, photo ID, and that ID must be valid. We are also asking that these individuals arrive 15 minutes early for the appointment. Late or missed appointments must be rescheduled because we have to ensure that we are respecting all safety protocols and we do not want to have any overpopulated spaces. We want to act in accordance with all regulations. So far, earlier today, all parents and guardians adhered to all of the protocols, and I want to say a heartfelt thank you to the COVID-19 task force, and particularly the compliance task force, for inspecting the space prior to distribution to ensure that we adhere to all protocols. An area of major concern, and many parents had questions around national examinations. By now, we are all aware that the national examinations have or will not take place this year. There are 2 national examinations offered by the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis, and those are the Test of Standards examination for students in grades 4 and 6 at the primary schools, and the common examinations for students in lower secondary school in selected subject areas. As we think about the way in which students transition to secondary schools and our traditional approach of using the scores from the Test of Standards examination, we would, of course, like to present to you the plan for student transition to secondary schools. And this plan was also outlined by Minister Sean Richards, as the approach is a federal one. We will use the students' grades 5, mathematics, language arts, social studies, and science grades, and also the mathematics, language arts, science, and social studies grades from terms 1 and 2 of the current academic year, that is their grade 6 year. We'll find the average of the aforementioned grades by subject for each student, and then the overall average. Finally, a meeting or deliberation with the grade 6 teachers will be held to allow for perusal and further discussion. And of course, there is great merit in this approach, and this approach is not a new one. This is actually the approach that has been used at the Department of Education alongside the Test of Standards. So the only component that is missing this year is the Test of Standards grade. And what we have observed over the years is that the grades are generally very consistent across the grade 5 year and the grade 6 year, as well as the Test of Standards. So we know that this will be fair to all students. And we also know that students have opportunities to continue to grow and to develop as they enter secondary school. Traditionally, at the end of term 1 at the secondary school, the principals and the staff take another opportunity to reevaluate as well, and that is our traditional approach. We also would have heard the announcement that there will be a provisional use of educational institutions for overseas exam preparations. And of course, this will be the CXC suite, CCSLC, CSEC, and CAPE. Although this provision will be made, I would like to take this opportunity to highlight that not all students will need to attend sessions. Only the students who have to complete an SBA, or if there are students who, or there are classes that did not get to finish particular topics or units or need to do further practice, will those students be asked to return to school. The spaces are being prepared, and of course there are several steps, which start with cleaning and then adhering to all of the social distancing protocols. At the end of the preparation phase, the spaces will need to be inspected by the compliance task force. Schools will communicate with parents and students who need to attend, providing a schedule and further information. Strict protocols will be adhered to prior and during and even after the students enter the campus. Parents and children will be alerted as to what these protocols are at a later date. I want to encourage parents and children to join us on Youth on the Go on Saturday, 30th May 2020. We will once again bring more extensive education updates. And this week we will focus on national examinations, providing a bit more information for you, provisional use of educational institutions for overseas examinations, CXC preparation, and of course, a bit of an update on Microsoft Teams. The Youth on the Go takes place from 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. and you can follow on Von Radio 860 a.m., Facebook, Von Radio's Facebook, and YouTube channel. If you need more information on any of the areas presented, you can contact your school's principal, or you can reach us at the Department of Education at 469-4651. Email us at education@niagov.com, or find us on Facebook, Ministry of Education, Nevis. I want to extend a heartfelt thank you to all members of the education team. Without you, we will not have been able to have made it this far. You are a phenomenal group of individuals. To parents and students, do not relax. Continue to exercise the necessary safety protocols, and the children continue to remain safe at home. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Claxton, for your updates. I'd now like to open up for any questions from our media houses.
Monique Washington, St. Nevis of the newspaper.
Hello, Monique.
And my questions are for Ms. Claxton. Now that the devices are being handed out, has there been a timeline for the virtual classes to start? And then the second question concerns high school students and promotional exams. Will using the same system with the children's past grades or past scores from last term, will those children be promoted or demoted based on those marks from the past terms for the school year?
Thank you for that question, Ms. Washington. To answer those questions, to answer your first question, the students will be accessing Microsoft Teams, their virtual learning space, on a rolling basis. The schools will alert them as to their username and password, and also to the day they will have to go on for their orientation. The hope is that that will be sooner than later, and I don't want to give an exact date because the date would not apply to all schools. But it will be very shortly, and it will be communicated by the school's principals and classroom teachers. In relation to the promotion of students at the secondary school, we have had conversations with the principals at the various secondary schools, and each secondary school has used the model in a way that best suits their context, and that will also be communicated to the parents and to the students as well.
Thank you, Ms. Claxton. Shamika Budgeon of Von Radio for Zanella Claxton. Tashiba, and I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, Frederick, acting president of the Antigua and Barbuda Union of Teachers, has recently mentioned teachers' displeasure of having students sit CXC exams in July. Do you think here in St. Kitts and Nevis that students will be prepared enough to sit the July exams?
Thank you, Ms. Budgeon. I would like to highlight that in a traditional school year, at the end of term 2, teachers would have covered their content and the students would have been prepared for the examination. That has been the tradition since time immemorial. It was my experience, and I know that that has been the experience of many others. This year, we released early for an early break, Easter break, and so some of the SBAs were not completed, and some teachers had a few units or areas that they needed to focus on. Those teachers in the traditional year would have used that 1 or 2 week period in the Easter to cover that ground. Following that Easter break, the students, fifth formers, may or may not have come back for 1 week, depending on the calendar year. And then they would have been at home preparing on their own because the teachers would have covered the content that they needed to be ready for the examination. The teachers have, those who needed to continue to remain in touch, they have been doing that. Those who have tried to stay in touch but have not had good results in interacting with the students, some students have, as I said prior, some students were not showing up to sessions. And those teachers have indicated that they would like to have a few sessions of face-to-face contact under the provisional allowance that I mentioned earlier to bridge that very small gap. With that said, a major part of the CXC examinations, once the content has been taught by the teacher, is determined by the student's commitment to reviewing and the ability to stay focused on doing just that. The major difference this year, of course, might be the psychosocial element, where the students have experienced lockdowns, they have not been out as much, and so from that perspective. But in terms of the educational and academic perspective, the students should be ready, and those who we feel may not be as ready, or those whose teachers feel that they may not be as ready, they have already alerted us, and those will be some of the students who will be given that provisional allowance to ensure that they are ready. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Claxton.
Good evening, Monique Washington, observer again. Ms. Claxton, has there been any conversation with the education officials about extending the school year beyond July, or the start of the new school year? Would it be earlier or later? Has there been any discussion in regarding the starting of the next school year and the ending of this school year?
I can assure you and all parents, guardians, and all listeners and viewers that any such decision or any decisions related to the closure or opening of school will be communicated via an official communique at the most convenient time. And so at this point, I am not in a position to give any dates or any information as it relates to that, but know that we will continue to keep the best interest of all parties at heart, and we will act in accordance with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Claxton. Thank you, Monique. Shamika Budgeon, Von Radio, for Superintendent Lyndon David. I'm not sure if this was previously mentioned, but can you provide the amount of persons that are allowed to take part in church services at a time?
In terms of church services, the regulation did not speak to the number, but it gave that once pastors and officiating persons can provide the necessary safe distancing in terms of 6 feet. When they would have finished that, the number of persons who can be assembled, that is the number that the church can take. The regulation will speak to funerals and weddings in terms of numbers, and most of the time you have a funeral in a church, the funeral service, that is. And then when it comes to weddings, most of the time the wedding ceremony as well will be in the church. And it speaks to the number for the funeral. It says 25 members of the immediate family, and it went on to 1 officiant, just the mortuary persons, and it speaks to, in terms of weddings, 25 persons, 1 officiant, camera technicians, and 2 essential witnesses. That's when you look at the number of persons should be in the church. But for the church service itself, as I stated earlier, it has to do with the distancing, the safe distancing that would be applied. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Superintendent David.
And again, and my last question is for Mr. David, and it concerns political meetings, political public meetings that are happening now. I know during the meetings, we can hear that persons ask what allowances or personal allowance are these political meetings allowed to have, and how is the police planning on dealing with after election on the 6th of June, because traditionally, you know, persons are in the street celebrating and so on and so forth. What are the plans to deal with the after election effects? Thank you.
Allow Mr. David to come answer.
Thank you very much, Ms. Washington. A very interesting and important question at this time. I will say to you that thus far here in Nevis, things are going well. I have visited both campaign headquarters, and the spacing was adequate for the numbers they required, and we permitted sufficient persons to witness and hear what they have to say in person, and then, you know, we have the world at large when they do the social media sort of broadcasting. In terms of victory or in terms of loss, the police is always prepared to address these matters, but you know, we're in a peculiar situation. Currently, we use at this time this medium to appeal to the consciences of our people, and we're also hoping that the political leaders will do the same to their supporters. And then the supporters themselves would realize that the situation that we're under at this time warrants that we should adhere to the necessary regulations that are out there to protect the spreading of COVID in our federation. Yes, it is clear that we have no new cases, but we still have to be certain that we do not want one just creep upon us, and then we have a problem that we didn't have before. We are currently preparing for any eventuality, and I know this morning persons would have seen police on the road, and so therefore we're doing many things, but at the end of the day, we will deal with the situation as it occurs. So to plan for a particular event, we do not know what will happen, so we just have to prepare for anything, and that's what we're doing at this time. Thank you very much.
All right, Mr. David.
Yes, Monique, I'm listening.
The political meetings, how can persons attend? Is there an application they have to file with the police? Does the party have to apply for a certain amount of persons? How does that part of it work?
Oh, that part, the party leader will apply to the police for the necessary numbers, because you realize that the meetings are held during the curfew period. So therefore, they will have to let us know how many persons which have done so, and they are going well, as I mentioned. And so therefore, if you are not on the list that they gave to us, well, you have to look at it on social media, well, if it broadcasts on the internet, the TV, you know. And you know, as far as I see, you got more room to jump up higher and whatever when something sweets you, you know. So, and don't have to look over your shoulder, you hit someone or so. You're there by yourself, or if you're in your family, no one there to argue with you, because all of you might be on the same page. If you're different, well, you will have to trust that out by yourselves. But we're hoping that in the household, if they're opposing persons, that they will do it with love, you know, and not with violence. So I want to thank you for that. I do hope that I satisfy your question. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Superintendent David. Thank you, Monique. I want to thank all our presenters and the media houses that have joined us this evening. I want to also remind persons to remember the instructions given under the state of emergency. Continue to wash your hands with soap and water. Cover your cough and sneeze with a tissue or flex elbow. Dispose of tissue in a clothesbin and wash hands immediately. Avoid touching your eyes, nose and mouth with unclean hands. Disinfect touch areas and surfaces often. Eat lots of vegetables, fruits, drink plenty of water, and exercise often to stay strong and fit. Practice physical distancing always, and stay at home if you do not need to move about. Hotline number 311 or 661-5051. Remember to sign up for the Nevis Health app. Together we can fight COVID-19. Additional thank you to Nevis Disaster Management, Nevis Television, Caribbean Digital Displays Limited, Cornerstone, and the task force members for making these briefings possible. I am Nadine Carty Keynes, and thank you for viewing. Do stay safe.